What if I told you the space race never really ended? What if all those Cold War, chest-thumping, flag-planting, Earth-orbiting moments were just the first season of a very long, very weird series? Spoiler alert, the Cold War may be dead, but the race for space is alive. Well, and now sponsored by billionaires with god complexes. Because while the 1960s had astronauts in matching suits, now we've got CEOs in cowboy hats launching themselves into orbit on phallic-shaped rockets. Buckle up. The original space race when nations had something to prove. Back in the golden age of paranoia, also known as the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union decided Earth just wasn't big enough for their egos. So naturally, they looked up. The space race officially began in 1957 when the Soviets lobbed Sputnik 1 into orbit. It was the first artificial satellite, and the rest of the world collectively freaked out. Americans in particular. They panicked so hard they basically invented NASA overnight. It was on, only with rockets, nuclear threats, and a not-so-healthy dose of propaganda. Then came Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. 1961, Soviet hero, poster boy of communism. America predictably lost its mind. So it fired back with Project Mercury, then Gemini, then Apollo. Just casually planning to land on the freaking moon. And then, bam, 1969. Neil Armstrong, moon boots. One small step, etc. The US declared victory like it was the Super Bowl, and Gagarin had just fumbled. But here's the thing no one talks about. Behind the flag waving were enough classified disasters to make your head spin. Soviet rockets exploded. American test pilots died in silence. Failures were rebranded, denied, or just conveniently never spoken of again. And just as quickly as it started, it ended. In 1975, the Apollo-Soyuz test project symbolized a brief kumbaya moment in space, a handshake in zero gravity. Very sweet, but also suspiciously anticlimactic. Was the race over, or just taking a breather? Now we are seeing a rise of the billionaire space cowboys. Fast forward a few decades. The Berlin Wall's down, the Cold War's iced, NASA's budget gutted. Everyone's watching reality TV instead of rocket launches. But then, plot twist, space makes a comeback. Not with government slogans or Kennedy speeches, but with hashtags and live streams. The new competitors? Not countries, corporations. Specifically, mega-rich dudes with childhood obsessions and enough cash to turn them into real-life Bond villains. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson. Their bank accounts could fund small nations, but they would rather use their powers for space. Musk's SpaceX is the clear frontrunner. Reusable rockets, Mars plans, partnerships with NASA, and way too many memes. He's basically taken space travel and turned it into a tech startup, complete with Twitter fights. Then there's Bezos with Blue Origin. His whole thing, building the road to space so our grandchildren can build a future. Translation: space condos, asteroid mining, and Bezos-branded moon boots. And don't sleep on Rocket Lab Virgin Galactic, or the dozens of tiny companies throwing CubeSats into orbit hoping to be the next big thing. It's like Shark Tank, but in space. But here's where things get weird. This isn't just about exploration anymore. It's about ownership. Colonization, monopoly, sound familiar? Because when you've got billionaires racing to plant flags on Mars, the question isn't, can we go? It's, who gets to own what once were there? And that is terrifying. When you look at the two space races, how does the new race stack up against the OG? Well, for starters, the original space race was about ideological warfare. Capitalism versus communism, JFK versus Khrushchev. It was government-funded, public-facing, and bathed in nationalistic drama. In contrast, today's space race is like Silicon Valley with boosters. It's fast, flashy, and driven by market value, not national pride. It's less, we choose to go to the moon, and more, we choose to monetize low Earth orbit. Old-school astronauts were military-trained, clean-cut, and borderline superheroes. Modern space travelers, tourists, influencers, wealthy thrill-seekers with GoPros strapped to their helmets. Oh, and let's talk about transparency. Back in the Cold War, at least governments pretended to follow treaties. Nowadays, private companies operate in regulatory gray zones. Who's keeping them in check? The FAA, please. And don't even start on the environmental impact. Rocket launches might look cool, but they leave behind carbon, debris, and literal trash in orbit. We've officially polluted space now. Great job, humanity. Even worse, we don't really have laws to manage this. There's the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which, spoiler alert, is laughably outdated. It says space belongs to all mankind. Billionaires read that and thought, cool, I'll take mine to go. Here's the question no one's asking. What does all this mean for, well, us? Because while a handful of rich guys are playing cosmic king of the hill, the rest of us are still figuring out how to pay rent. If they do succeed in colonizing Mars or mining the moon, who decides who gets to benefit? The promise of space used to be about expanding human knowledge. Now, it's about expanding profit margins. Sure, costs have gone down. Space is technically more accessible. But accessible to who? People with a few $1 billion and a dream? Or actual scientists and explorers? There's a very real possibility we're building a space-based society where inequality is baked in from the start. First-class cabins to the moon, steerage for the rest of us. And the ethics? Yikes. Who's in charge of making sure Mars isn't just another colonial disaster? Or that satellites don't become weapons? Or that space mining doesn't lead to literal Star Wars? Right now, there are more rules about how to install a dishwasher than there are about building a space colony. We're on the verge of becoming an interplanetary species. And we're winging it like it's a college group project. Let's zoom out. The original space race wasn't just about rockets. It was about control. Of the skies, of the narrative, of the future. The same is true now. Only instead of red versus blue, it's Tesla stock versus Amazon Prime. And here's the wildest part. This modern space race might actually be more dangerous. Because back then, nations were at least somewhat accountable to their citizens. But CEOs? They answered to no one. Except maybe their shareholders. The moon landing was a shared moment for humanity. Jeff Bezos riding a rocket into the upper atmosphere? That was a meme. This isn't about exploration anymore. It's about legacy, branding, immortality. Musk wants to die on Mars. Bezos wants to build floating space cities. These guys aren't just chasing space, they're chasing godhood. And while they argue over lunar real estate and Martian settlements, Earth continues to burn. Climate crisis, inequality, war. But sure, let's build space yachts. What's worse, once they do figure out how to make space profitable, do you think they're coming back for us? Please. They'll be too busy charging $1 million per seat and bottling moon water as a luxury product. So, did the space race end in 1975? Not even close. It mutated. It evolved. From governments and corporations, nationalism and capitalism, to astronauts and influencers. And the stakes are just as high, if not higher, because this time it's not just about who can get to space first. It's about who gets to own it. So next time you see a rocket launch, ask yourself, is this the next great leap for mankind? Or just the next IPO? Because the final frontier might be infinite, but the number of people allowed to benefit from it? That's looking suspiciously limited. The space race didn't die, it just got rebranded. As we venture further into the cosmos, it's imperative to consider not just the technological feats we achieve, but the values and principles that guide our journey. And the real question is, are we still the audience, or have we become the product? Let us know in the comments.